I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Vroom, vroom. Welcome to the next reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
F1 is over. Hey, you lose that lead and I'll kill you.
So you like straight talk?
Straight as an arrow. No sugar.
Why are you here, Sonny? When you look in the mirror, you see this rough and tumble, old school cowboy. Doesn't take orders, goes his own way, huh? A lone wolf. Well, I've news for you. Formula One is a team sport. It always was. Listen, let's get this straight. We all lose our jobs if you can't pull off a miracle.
No pressure.
None.
The only question here is, why did Sonny Hayes come back to F1?
I think it's really wonderful that Apex are giving second chances to the elderly.
It's all right. You're just worried I'm quicker than you.
You're making a mistake, thinking that I'm just going to be some grateful kid who'll bend the knee to an old timer.
I never should have pulled you into this.
Down the inside, contact!
That's the other driver. You say he was old, he not that old. That's a handsome man right there.
What's he doing?
Plan C, be ready. Just gotta hope for some lucky breaks.
Hope it's not a strategy.
Anything else, Professor?
Try fast. Ever seen a miracle?
Not yet. How do you think I'd feel if you die on the track?
3 laps. 3 laps is a lifetime.
Okay, lay it on me. Just get it out of the way. Rip off the Band-Aid.
I enjoyed it. I thought that it was a very enjoyable film. It was very cookie cutter. I was a little surprised as to just how cookie cutter it was. I say that when I see Aaron Kruger's name in front of a script or as the screenwriter, that usually tells me be wary.
A cat will be saved on page 75.
This is not going to be a script. Well, I don't know. Sometimes I really enjoy Aaron Kruger's scripts. Sometimes they are very, very safe, very Hollywood, and sometimes to a point where I just don't really like them at all. So very up and down with Aaron Kruger. And so I saw the name. So that kind of, I was like, uh-oh. And then I watched the movie. I'm like, yeah, okay. Lot of tropes. So many tropes.
Yep. So many tropes. It's a trope parade.
But I still enjoyed it.
Okay. All right. I guess that's what I was hoping for.
Is that everything you're hoping for, though? Maybe not everything.
I, on the other hand, was a child and was like giddy from the opening frame. I loved it. I could not get enough of it. I know there are probably things that I should quibble with. I'm not gonna. You're right. It's a trope parade. It plays the hits and it plays the hits hard. But I don't think I was surprised by the hits being played because I also watched the trailer a million times. And the trailer lays out the tropes that are going to be played. If you've ever seen, a movie, this is going to be exactly what this is going to be. And the truth of the matter is where the movie shines is exactly where it should shine, in the technical achievement of demonstrating speed on a very large screen. And for that, I am grateful the movie exists. It is absolutely my favorite of the series that we've done on driving, on racing movies.
Yeah, this was kind of an extra that we got that you lucked out on, that the movie happened to be timed perfectly, and suddenly we're like, hey, let's do another member bonus episode. So here we are, a surprise-ish member bonus episode talking about this as part of your car racing series.
Wait a minute, Andy. What's this member bonus you speak of?
Oh, yes, Pete. So we have a membership here at The Next Reel, and for members, you get early access to ad-free episodes in your own feed. And not just to our show, you get all the shows that are part of The Next Reel family of podcasts. You get The Next Reel, which is this show. You get Sitting in the Dark, which is our horror show. Pete is one of the 4 co-hosts on that, the rotating co-hosts. You get our Movies We Like show, which is our conversations with people who work in the industry about one of their favorite films. You get my CinemaScope show, which talks about genres, subgenres, and film movements. And you get our monthly show, The Film Board, which talks about a brand new release just in theaters. And you get a hot take, very spoilery hot take about one of the newest movies in theaters. So you get all of those shows and whatever member additional content that is provided for those shows, you get in your member bonus feed. For some shows, we have pre-show chats. Some shows we have post-show chats. We do a monthly member bonus episode. And so there's a great benefit to being a member, all for $5 a month or $55 a year. You can sign up at truestory.fm/join.
Hallelujah. Amen. Okay. F1. We know it's going to be tropey. We know it's going to be, tropalicious. And yet, when the first vroom vroom begins, how did you feel? And I'm really interested in your take on this as a non-racing aficionado.
Yeah. And when you say when the first vroom vroom begins, because the film starts with Sonny living as a roving nomad in his van, and he's at and he's having dreams about some past race that he did, which is the race with the car noise that I like, that really high pitched noise. That's the race that he was in, but he's in a different race, and he's part of the 24 Hours of Daytona, and I guess that's where we find him, where the race had already been going and he's one of the team, and he's being woken up because he's got a few minutes before he has to get out there and race again. And that's kind of our introduction to this. Then he hops in the car, drives for a while, and then he gets out and
does his laundry,
passes it on to the new driver.
Oh,
well, he passes the torch to whoever is the driver who's going to finish the race. How many drivers did you say are in these 24-hour races on a team?
In this one, for the 24 Hours of Daytona, it's 3 to 4 per car.
Okay, so he had his rest time. Wait, would they each only race once, or is like how?
No. Over the course of 24 hours, they rotate shifts, and so each driver will drive multiple shifts.
But how long? Because I remember when we were talking about Le Mans. Well, I don't remember if it came up in Le Mans or in Ford v Ferrari, but there was a time limit. Like they couldn't race longer than X number of hours, right? Well, like 4 hours or something.
Yeah, I think it's somewhere around there. Let me just find out for you.
Yeah, because if it's a 4 hour max, and if they each run 4 hours, that means each driver would run one time, and then 2 drivers would run an additional 4 hours.
Yeah. So typical stint length, 1 to 2 hours per stint. Most drivers go.
Wow.
Well, okay. Stay tuned.
Okay,
I have more to say. Don't judge
I
yet.
just was surprised that it was such
I know. Oh, I heard it. Most drivers go double stints, back-to-back fuel tire runs, which works out to 60 to 90 minutes, sometimes stretching to 2 hours, depending on tire durability, fuel efficiency, night versus day driving, weather conditions. Over 24 hours, a 3 or 4 driver team will rotate about 6 to 8 times per driver. Drivers rest, hydrate, eat, and nap in the paddock between shifts, usually getting 4 to 6 hours of total sleep in fragments over the 24 hours. IMSA, which is the governing body of Daytona rules, limit continuous driving to 4 hours within a 6-hour period. FIA, which is F1 and Le Mans, they have similar caps, no more than 14 hours of total driving for any one driver over 24 hours. Wow. And no more than 4 hours within any 6-hour window. So there's, some of it is determined by immediacy of the strategy, which is tires and fuel.
Sure.
Some of it is this driver is really, really good at, for some reason, at twilight driving. So they're going to drive all the way through late afternoon through night and just get us through the hardest to see period of the race, that kind of a thing. So it depends.
Those are the Edwards who are doing that racing.
Those are the Edwards.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
Right.
Okay. So, all right. So we jump into this race and we get a sense of Sonny and his driving. And I mean, I had a good time. It was fine with the racing. I'm trying to remember if there's anything spectacular in the opening stint of his race. And I don't really recall anything. I just thought he raced because then he's the sort of driver who just seems like he doesn't even care about the actual race. He's there just to actually race, if that makes sense. He doesn't care about who wins or loses. I mean, he likes the money, but he just wants to race because as soon as you said, he gets out of the car, he just leaves and goes and does his laundry.
Because, you know, at this point in his career, he had driven F1 when he was younger. It's been a long time.
That was his crash.
That was his big crash, was in F1. And at this point in his career, he's a hired gun, right? So he's driving for this team, but it's because they had an open seat and they needed a ringer. And so the team principal went out and said, Sonny, you're the guy. And it's demonstrated early on what kind of character we're going to get in Sonny Hayes. We're going to get a guy who is capable of four-dimensional chess on the racetrack. He has a superpower, and that is when you put him behind the wheel, he's going to be able to see openings and move the car ahead in a way that no other driver is going to be able to do. And so that's just the setup. He's going to be effectively unbeatable. If that doesn't necessarily mean winning races, it's going to mean contributing to the team sport that is racing. And I think that's really fun because what we see here as we transition into F1 and his entree back into the sport is his sort of special ability to navigate the track.
Yeah, we definitely get that because when he hops into the car in Daytona, he clearly figures things out pretty quickly and gets into the first position. Is that the pole position? Is that what you call that? I don't know. Anyway,
yeah, okay, yeah, it's okay. Use words. He's fine.
He's in first place.
He gets into first place. Yeah.
That's why he says, "If you lose my lead, I'll kill you." And then he goes off to do his laundry.
Because he had gone, we catch him when he was asleep. And when he wakes up, he finds, oh my God, we were in the lead when I was driving and now we suck. And now I have to do this all again. I have to go get our lead back. And he feels sort of exhausted and put upon. And that's a bit of a comedic kind of a relief in that first race.
Yeah. So that's a sense of who he is. And that's when we meet Ruben, who is his old driving partner when they were on the same team back in that early F1 in the 90s. He has now gotten out of racing and he is now running a team. He's running the Apex team, Formula One team, and
he owns the team.
He owns the team and they're not doing very well. And so he is kind of in a financial position where the board wants to sell the team off. This was, I think, the film that gave me the most insight of every film that we talked about in our series of how teams operate. Like the fact that, and it makes sense, like it's, he owns it, but there's a board who is evaluating the performance and they're going to sell the team if he doesn't get better. And right now he's on a losing streak. They haven't won a single race in the whole Grand Prix season or Formula One season. I don't know how the right way to say it is, but
Formula One season's good.
Formula One season of Grand Prix races. And he's
You're overdoing it, man. You're overdoing it.
I'm throwing all the words I know in. I want to sound like I know something. And so he is now in a position where he has to get better at this because he's only got 9 races left. And so that's why they're getting rid of a driver, as I recall, and he's asking Sonny to step in and be that new replacement.
Right. So they took the original driver, who everybody was, I think, pretty skeptical that he was going to be able to be a principal driver, and they made him a backup driver. And that driver did get to drive, right, later in the movie when
that
Damson
Luca?
Idris. Yeah, Damson Idris was injured, but he doesn't get much of a story.
No,
Luca doesn't have much to do.
He's very much a reserve guy through this whole thing.
But I think it's important to note when Javier Bardem meets Brad Pitt in the laundromat and pitches the idea of coming to F1, he says how in the whole he is as a team. And I really appreciated this because he said, we're in the whole, I think the number is $350 million that they were in the whole. That is an extraordinary figure for a single team to be carrying as a losing team. Like, that's a massive write-off if you can't get some share, some stake by winning some races. And that is the shocking, just a drop in the bucket of the shocking scale of money that is in this race that is divided between these 20 teams, right? I mean, it is extraordinary money these 10 teams, extraordinary money divided between very few participants in the race. It's an expensive sport, and that is saying a lot.
Well, and that goes to another thing I appreciate about this, because it really shows you where they're putting their money. I mean, obviously, we've kind of seen over the course of this series that the cars get a lot of attention. Like, they're throwing a lot of money at these cars to soup them up and make sure that they can do all the right things and that they're as streamlined as possible. Like, there's a lot of thought that goes into these cars. But then you have like the car testing facility where, you know, our tech director, Kate, Carrie Condon's character, where she puts the car and it's got the wind blowing and they can evaluate the movement of the wind over the car and how it's performing. So they've got that. They've got the, I don't know what you call it, the special wraparound room with a pseudo car in it that can replay races, where you've got the little tech girl up above who's controlling it. And
the simulator.
Okay, simulator. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I liked my description better.
It was a word you already knew.
So you start getting a sense of all of these different elements that go into actually putting together a competitive team, and you realize why it can cost so much money. And I thought that was really interesting. And just like the insights into the team meetings that we had before each race, where they'd all sit at the long table and they'd have these discussions about how to plan things out, plan A, plan B, plan C. This is when you get your soft tires, your medium tires, your hard tires. There was so much thought that went into that. And for me, a layman who doesn't understand a thing about racing, it really helped me like break down the process and all of the different elements that went into actually running a race in today's very, very modern, very, very high-tech racing world. And I thought, and this team excelled at giving us a sense of just how infused into the sport and important in the races the actual team element is. Because this is the only film we've had that actually is about the team. Like, we actually get incredible focus on Sonny and JP and their relationship as the two teammates driving for Apex, which I really valued. And I was thinking about this. I'm like, I don't think I even knew the names of any of the other people in the other films that we talked about who were part of the team, because it was always focused on one driver. And that's really weird in a team sport.
Right. I absolutely agree with all of that. I think all of that stuff is really where the movie shines, right? Where we get to see, and this is stuff that I talked about on our last shows, that how important it is to acknowledge the fact that F1 is a team sport. When you think of the engineers building the cars, when you think of the number of replacement parts that they have to have on hand to be able to maintain cars' presence in the races, especially when you let Brad Pitt drive. Man, did they go through a lot of parts for this guy. And we'll talk about that strategically in a bit. But for me, the fact that we have relationships that develop with representatives from the engineering team, the pit crew, they all have a place to play. And I think this movie does a really good job of showcasing the unsung heroes of F1, which are the people who are able to do pit changes in 1.7 seconds. I mean, that's an extraordinary feat of athleticism and technique, and it's great to see on screen.
It was funny because we first kind of meet our pit crew as, I mean, this is one of those story elements that I was kind of like, rolling my eyes at. Everybody needs their own little character arc. And we have one of the pit crew, a young woman who, I don't know if she's new or she's new to this team or what, but she's nervous. And in the process of changing tires, like she drops the auto wrench thing and the car drives over it when it pulls out, and there are issues. They made the change in the pit. It was like 9 seconds, and I'm like, wow, that was fast. And then the movie was like, oof, wow, boy, they need to pick up their speed. I was like, oh, I guess I'm wrong. 9 seconds seemed fast to me.
Well, and I spoke up. I spoke incorrectly. It's not 1.7. It's 1.8 seconds is the fastest pit stop ever recorded. It was by McLaren during the 2023 Qatar Grand Prix. The previous record was 1.82 seconds by Red Bull. So 1.8 to 1.82.
I don't even understand how that's possible. Like, you've got to get the little guy in the front to pop the car up, front and back, because they both have to lift the car up and then put it down, which seems like it would take more than 1.7 seconds. Because like 1.7 seconds is like boop, boop, like they basically up, down, and move out of the way.
Yeah. And when you think about like watching the sort of symphony of action in the pit is so fun because everyone has one thing to do, just one thing, and you have to be able to do it in a fraction of a second. And that is completely bananas that they're able to do that and makes it so exciting. Like it just really, you have a refined sense of what the entire team is capable of. So all that is winning.
Yeah, no, that's, I think, where the film excels more than anything else, is giving a sense of how a team in this particular sport works in today's races. It was, for me, kind of the most engrossing part of the film.
For sure. Now, the other piece for me that was engrossing was the actual driving. Now, we've talked about every race movie that we've talked about, with the exception, I think, of Racing in the Rain. It has moved racing coverage forward somehow in some small way, right? From Le Mans to Grand Prix, they do things with cameras on cars that is unique and incredible for the time. This is another movie, another data point in the arc of racing technology that does this. And I found the actual time on track exhilarating. I loved every opportunity to get in and behind these cars, whether we're in a race, whether we're in a montage about races, whatever it was. I loved it. How'd you feel? I
thought the racing was fine, but I guess, well, no, just in the scope of evolution of racing, filming at races, I didn't think that it really did anything different than what we had talked about in Ford v Ferrari from 2019. So, and maybe I was just missing it. I mean, we have, footage of them driving and panning, the camera pans while they're driving. And so I guess I just didn't see, like, there's shots on the track behind them, on the track in front of them. Like we get all of the same types of shots. What were there things that they were doing differently with some of these cameras that I was just missing?
Well, part of the limitations that they have when dealing with these cars in particular, and similar to Le Mans, but I think the speeds of these cars make certain camera technologies impossible. And in order to capture what it feels like to be on board these cars at 220 miles an hour and deal with the vibration and the movement and all of that stuff, they had to invent some camera technology that did not exist before. Like, for example, in these were modified F2 cars that were lengthened by, I think Mercedes lengthened the cars and to make these F2 cars look like F1 cars. And there are wings right above the driver's head on the back, as there's this post on the back of the car and kind of sweeps down. And there are wings on the side. And they invented, using this incredible technology, it was actually Apple who invented this camera using iPhone components, but iPhone components are really good to be able to fit in this wing that mounts to the car and becomes an item of aerodynamics in addition to a camera that is shooting the driver. It is really cool. This POV stuff is actually novel to this film.
Is it?
Yeah.
We haven't had POV shots before?
No. I'm just saying
before.
we've had POV shots before, but I think how they did it, it has a unique look and feel in these cars. This is not, these aren't the same cars that we were dealing with before.
That's true, because Ford v Ferrari, we're dealing with, I don't know what you kind of call that kind
GT
of car
cars.
body, but
Yeah.
it's a normal looking sedan sort of car versus these that look like what you think of as a Matchbox race car. Like these have that single person right in the middle sort of seat. I am very good on my car descriptions today.
You did great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sedans versus Matchbox cars is basically the breakdown that we have here.
And the fact that they built all these things in order to race on tracks during race weekends, right? Like Kosinski had a 7-minute window between actual F1 sessions to get Brad Pitt and Damson Idris onto the grid to shoot their sequences and be able to create that level of immersion for us. And I think that is really, really neat, right? Like it's so real.
So, well, I mean, yeah, they're filming on a racetrack, which is what everyone else has done. So,
oh my God, you're such find joy.
Well,
find joy.
I guess I'm not. Yeah. I mean, no, it's great. It's great that they're doing that. And you're right. Like the improvements in technology should always be celebrated because it's fascinating to see how they're finding ways to put these cameras into these situations to still get amazing shots. And they do achieve that. I felt like we were getting comparable material 6 years ago in the other film, but you're right. They're different cars, et cetera, et cetera. So there is still value in the way that they are working to do this. So I don't want to sell that short.
And yet your tone and mood is selling that short. 16 camera mounts capturing high-speed racing in real time during Grand Prix weekends at these incredible tracks around the world.
Well, so here's a question. So, were they just racing around by themselves, and then did they digitally add the other cars in on race weekend? Were they, because they're not going to have the real racers who are in the middle of a race then say, okay, well, stop the race for a minute because we need you to race with Brad Pitt for 9 minutes.
It's a combination of all of those things. My understanding is that there were weekend races where Brad Pitt was on the track with other F1 drivers.
And so they were just zipping past him, and they're just like, "Don't screw this up for me, Pitt."
Because he's a winner. Except for the beginning, he was always at the back. Right? but so it is a combination of a lot of different tools to actually do this. But the fact is, it was vastly practical, and that is the thing to celebrate about this movie. That they did a thing. F1 has never looked like this on the big screen.
Well, I guess just following up on that, as far as what they're accomplishing practically, it was interesting to see, and this is something I know we've talked about a little bit, but as far as when they're crashing and when cars are hitting each other, whether it results in a crash or not, I was curious about how much of that they were actually doing on track, because I don't know. I guess I don't know enough about the production style of doing something like this, of having two cars. And obviously when they're actually filming with Brad Pitt, he's not racing around at 320 kilometers an hour. He's probably going at a safer speed, we'll just say, for our actors. But are they actually having them bumping cars with each other? I'm just curious, how far do they go? Because it seems like there's a point where the insurance is going to say, well, you need to use effects to capture that. Because we've got bumping with each other. We've got cars hitting each other to break pieces away off of the cars. We've got cars hitting each other and then spinning out into barriers or into the gravel. At one point, we've got a car completely flipping off the track when it hits the wrong thing, spiraling and then exploding. And I know we've talked about that particular thing in films like Le Mans, and how they would basically take a shell of a car and eject it off of the track to capture that footage and make it look like the car went off the track and exploded in the trees or something like that. But I was curious, like, and I don't know if you had time to, I mean, this movie just came out. I don't know if you had time to dig into much of that as far as the effects work. Because I know like ILM was involved, and obviously watching the credits, there were definitely still a lot of effects companies involved on the back end of this.
Huge. Right. And you know, I listened to an interview with Kosinski talking about this, and he said he actually approached it very much like they approached Top Gun Maverick, right? These races were approached as if they were aerial dogfights, right? Intense planning, getting the cars at just the right places at just the right times, slowing them so they could crash safely at low speeds while looking fast with, like, depending where the angles are. And you know, to do the things like you're talking about, to be crashed or spun intentionally with minimal risk. A lot of stunt drivers in hero cars, they destroyed a lot of cars doing this, and they did them on real racetracks with, you know, some of the film dedicated segments on race weekends, some of them outside of race weekends, so they could get coverage without interrupting races. And that would allow them to have full track access, right? That's really important to do these crashes because it's just a lot of debris, right? But you're absolutely right. And so the crash rigs and pyrotechnics are obviously not things they do on race weekends. Those big test crashes, the AGP or APX GP crashes that flame out are obviously deeply not race weekend events.
No, yeah. No, but even still, just like the ability to capture those. I mean, stunt drivers, I'm sure, are helpful, but at the same time, you're also trying to figure out. It's just fascinating to me, like figuring out the logistics of that. Like, how do we fake a crash? You know, I mean, CG, you could probably figure it out pretty easy, but if they're trying to do it practically, you've got to figure out kind of speed, angle of impact, and then how do you then create the momentum for the car to hit what it's going to hit and spin out. Like, I find that to be kind of interesting in the scope of the process of putting something like this together.
Yeah. I know one of the challenges and why so many F1 advisors, like former drivers and Lewis Hamilton's, obviously his you know, part in this movie can't be understated.
Who is he again?
Lewis Hamilton was I think he was an executive producer. He was a production producer on this thing, and he was the senior advisor. He drives today for Ferrari, but at the time, he was a world champion for Mercedes, and so he drove the Mercedes car. And at the end, when Brad Pitt and Damson Idris are racing against that last car, like who's going to win that last car, that was Lewis Hamilton.
Did they say in the race, was he Lewis Hamilton, or was it some other name that they actually
said? Yeah, they said
Lewis Hamilton. Okay.
Yeah, and let me just say, like, the mind-blowingness of this movie, that it looks like I just turned on F1 TV on race weekend. Like, no fake names, no fake anything. They used all real driver names. The lineup, when it was like Damson Idris and Brad Pitt, and then our current F1 slate of drivers. This was as immersive an event, a film, as I have ever seen in terms of being in the universe of the sport as it exists or existed, 2 years ago. It was incredible. Even the broadcaster, the guy who stood up and asked questions, like all the team of broadcasters. There was a sequence where you get pan into a reporter on in front of McLaren at one point at Silverstone, and it was the guy that you see every single weekend covering F1 and has been doing so for years. So this was an incredibly immersive and weird choice because it felt like a documentary about race weekend. It felt like Drive for Survive because they did not mask any identities of the real people who are involved in racing. On that front, I've never seen anything quite like it.
Interesting. And I just walked through it just assuming they're all extras because none of them ring a bell to me.
There was a sequence when they were doing a presser on the F1 stage with full press, and they had the team principals, Fred Vasseur and what's his name from McLaren, and then our AGP team principal. And there was the three of them on a couch, right? And
this is I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
those two guys are the team principals for McLaren and Ferrari, and you see them sitting on the couch every weekend doing these pressers, and they sit exactly like they were sitting on the show. Like, there was just nothing that felt off kilter about the capture of F1 in this movie. Absolutely nothing.
So this begs the question, because Kosinski and Kruger came up with the story together, and then Kruger wrote the script. I mean, do you know much as far as like either of these people, as far as them being race fans? I mean, we hear about a lot of actors being like race fans to the point where they're actually racing. Like, I mean, we talked about, I can't remember what's his name, McDreamy being somebody
Patrick Dempsey
being a racer, stuff like that. I'm just curious, like
Jude Law,
how many of these people of this crew actually are also active fans, subscribe to the F1 channel, everything. I mean, the way that you describe it sounds like Kosinski and Kruger must, to some capacity, have a driving passion for this if they're working so hard to make it seem so realistic.
The way he says it, he did not. That he wasn't a diehard F1 fan until Netflix's Drive to Survive. He found it.
Can you say what that is? Because I'm not sure what you keep mentioning it. I don't know what it is.
Andy. Oh, like a babe in the woods. Drive to Survive is a show on Netflix that covers the season of F1. And so at the end of each season, they are deeply embedded into each team. And it's this like 8 or 10 episode documentary of the season of F1, the highs, the lows, the silly season when people are traded, back and forth, teams are traded and reshuffled. It's 7 seasons in now. So it's been going around since just before the pandemic. And it documents the work of all of these people in bringing the F1 season to life. And these are the same people that you see in this movie. So you could say this is like Drive to Survive the movie. Honestly, like we're kind of there. It's extraordinary. It's extraordinary. But a lot of people over the pandemic found their love of F1 through Drive to Survive, just like Kosinski. Now, Kruger, I actually don't know how excited he was, if he has a fan like origin story, but he was obviously invested. And the first person that they brought on to work with was Lewis Hamilton to say, look, we have this idea for this movie and we want to make sure it's right. And so, we need you to do it. Before they had any cast, before they had Brad Pitt, they had Lewis Hamilton.
Interesting. Okay.
And he's a multi-time world champion driver. Like in the sport, he is one of the living legends for sure.
Well, and then that probably helped the studios, everyone else say, okay, let's go ahead and move forward with this. We're going to try to make Drive to Survive the movie. I know there was a bidding war with the studios and Apple ended up winning. And this is a very expensive film for Apple. And yeah, I don't honestly know. I know sometimes we're always debating with these streamers, are they really going to give it a theatrical release that it probably warrants, or are they just going to kind of give it a piddly theatrical release and really save it for their streaming network? And this definitely seems like one Apple wants to make some money on, so they actually put it in theaters, like big theaters like IMAX, all that, and which I like that Apple at least gave it that thinking when they approached it.
Well, it's hard not to kind of engage in some Apple Kremlinology on this because, Apple it's a complicated global concern. And there's some part of the internet response machine in the Apple sphere that says, look, why would Apple spend this much money on this movie? I mean, extraordinary, insidious advertising on Apple devices, Apple services. It's everywhere. If there isn't some ulterior motive to associate Apple with F1, is there some sort of move somewhere that Apple is going to try to become an exclusive F1 broadcaster? This is the kind of money that you need to spend to be that partner with the FIA. And it makes me think maybe Tim Cook wants to be in the paddock with these team principals, right? Like, this feels like something different from a promotional strategy. It feels like something that I haven't seen before, not just on TV in linear ads, but getting the pop-ups on my watch, right? To say, hey, have you bought your tickets for F1 yet? If you buy them with Apple Pay through Fandango, we'll throw you $10 off. Like, that kind of advertising I haven't seen from Apple. And this is sort of a new era of pushing the influence of their channels. And it's annoying and obnoxious, but they want this movie to be seen.
Yeah. Interesting. I haven't got any of those texts or pokes, so it's interesting that, because I also have Apple, like an iPhone, but it's interesting that I'm not getting those. So I wonder what you're signed up for that I'm not.
Probably a lot.
When it comes to Apple, everything.
Yeah, everything else.
Right.
But it is actually, I mean, I want to say it's been a march of lampoon and complaint by the Apple press that they're using undocumented APIs that other advertisers and developers can't use in order to advertise this movie. And that's upsetting a lot of people, right? It seems like a double standard that they're engaging in that they've never done before to this extent. And it's pretty obnoxious, even if the movie's good.
Yeah. I mean, obviously our regulatory systems have changed drastically over the last number of decades, but there was a point where activity like this would be frowned upon and the FCC would crack down. Like, if CBS had owned a particular network or was owned by a particular network, that they would say, well, we're only going to advertise this, or we're not going to let anyone else advertise this. We're only going to do it here, or whatever. It seems like a strange way to kind of control what you're pumping out there. So,
for sure,
interesting. Well, can I talk about some of my gripes with the movie and the script?
Yes.
I know how much you love it.
No. Well, I know my response is going to be irrational, but I want to make sure some of those gripes are the strategy on track. That's a thing we're going to need to talk about. So,
okay. Well, I don't have any.
Begin. I have a footnote, and we can talk about it when you're done.
And mine just goes to really just how, in so many ways, like how expected the story plays out, right? Like, you've got the aged old timer coming back for one last race, is what it seems like, and he's joining with like this hotshot rookie, and they've got to learn to work together. It's like, okay, been there, done that. As much as I love Brad Pitt, Damson Idris, I don't think I've seen in anything, but what a screen presence! Like, I loved watching him on screen. Fantastic. I love the two of them together. So many moments about their relationship, though, like the way that JP initially is like pushing back at everything that Sonny wants him to do and it won't listen, and the lessons that Sonny teaches about, like, don't pay attention to your phone, the way that he does his balls to focus on his reflexes, and Sonny's got that, or JP's got that fancy little machine. And you slowly see JP shifting, like he's not going to go out late anymore and party. He's going to switch from his little touchy machine to the balls like Sonny does. He's going to start jogging with the team in the morning, every morning before the race. Like, it's just like, okay, yes, every beat, we're getting every single thing that is expected of this type of story when you want to make it very Hollywood cookie cutter. Same thing you can argue with Kate. This is Carrie Condon, who I love. We talked about her when we talked about Banshees of Inisherin. That relationship, like, it's like, it felt honestly like dated, like 80s, 90s relationship sort of story back in the day where they had to make it a love story. It's like, I felt like we were kind of past that. Apparently not. Apparently we're back to the place where it has to still turn into a love story. I rolled my eyes heavily at that. But also just the fact that she goes through the motions of saying, well, I never date anybody who I'm, who's a part of the team during the racing season, blah, blah, blah. And then instantly gets together with him. I'm like, wow, this is so exactly how this would play out in the 80s or 90s. Like, it was such an old school way of crafting a relationship like that, where it kind of took away some of the interest for me in her as a character, because it's like, now she's just the love interest, blah, blah, blah. So that was all frustrating. You've got the whole thing with the board member trying to sabotage the team, like that subterfuge of Peter Banning, Tobias Menzies' character.
Oh, you mean the mustache twirling villain?
Mustache twirling villain. My goodness. Yeah. And even like I already mentioned, like the young woman who's one of the tire gunners, Jody the tire gunner, who has her own character arc of growing and learning, like, I can get through this. I don't have to be nervous, and I'm going to make it super fast. And I'm going to even have a nice little conversation with Sonny when he stops in and just say, your car's all ready for you, or whatever she does. Like, it all was just eye-rollingly expected. It played fine. I mean, it's a Hollywood movie. It hits the beats. It does what they set out to do. But man, I just was like, kind of like, I couldn't believe they made this as basic, I'll say, this day and age as what they did. And I don't know if that's because Apple just wanted to make sure we're checking all the boxes to get as big of an audience as we can with this, make sure that it's going to hit 4 quadrant. I don't know what it is, but boy, did it feel like they were playing it safe.
I will say, from what I know about Apple's involvement, is they typically don't put their thumb on the proverbial scale. There are all kinds of rumors out there about what they will and will not allow, and most of those have been debunked that by the filmmakers, saying, hey, Apple bought into the project because they believe in the project, and if they don't feel good about what's going on, they don't invest in the project. It doesn't become an Apple original. They don't tell filmmakers how to make their films. That's the general sort of marching over. So I wouldn't necessarily blame this on Apple, but I would blame this on the Hollywood industrial complex that does feel like we need to make movies that are big, energetic, and we're spending so much money on this. Let's make sure it checks all of the emotional boxes as quickly and effortlessly as we can. Let's not think too hard about, make it too hard on ourselves by integrating complex characters. And that's why you get this train wreck of female representation in this movie, which is, in Jodie the gunner and Carrie Condon, which have seeds of awesomeness and are absolutely deflated through the course of the narrative arc. It's very troubling at how poorly they handled Carrie Condon's character. The amount of time they let us experience her character as an engineer, as somebody of intelligence and experience, before they make her a puppet for Brad Pitt is stunningly bad. I felt for her in this, but I don't. This is the movie, right? Like they made this choice to be a trope factory, and it's frustrating. I don't have any counter to your quibbles because they're real. Like, they're absolutely real. I can do nothing but agree.
Yeah. Well, and to your point about Kate, like, and we get it. It's a losing team. They're struggling. Their cars are crap. Like, we're kind of sold on the fact that the cars are crap. Well, that seems like it would be Kate's fault that the cars are crap. And I guess we kind of get that because Sonny knows everything, and he comes in and is telling Kate, well, we got to pay attention to the dirty wind and whatever. And like, wants to make these changes. And she's like, machines don't do any of this sort of stuff, and gets very frustrated with him. And then, of course, follows his lead. That spoke to the fact that...
Well, because that's what she wanted the whole time, is a driver that would work in partnership with her, and she wasn't getting it from Damson. Like, that part I actually thought was pretty good. That worked.
That worked, but it didn't. But he's giving her the specific things that I want to do, and she's not, like, she should be able to say, well, I wanted to know, like, I don't know, just the way that the conversations happened between them, it made it sound like he's not just a mentor to JP, he's also a mentor to Kate. And like, it's like I got that from that moment she has that conversation with JP, and he can't tell her what's wrong, and again, very overwritten. I need you to be able to tell me, was it before or what after? He's like, I don't know. And then he comes in and instantly like tells her every little bit of detail that he needs. So it's like, okay, yeah, we are clear on that. But even to the point where when they're looking at the machine, this is the scene I'm talking about. She's analyzing the wind factor, and he's just like, well, can it analyze when you're trailing somebody or whatever it's called, and riding in their
draft
pull or what draft? She's like, oh, I never thought, like the way that she react, like that whole scene played like she was kind of an idiot. And like that, again, just makes it seem like Sonny is a mentor to everybody and he's going to come in and save the day. It was very frustrating in the way that all is written.
It's such a stupid hole too in their relationship, because what we want, right, if we're armchairing this, is we want him to come in as the expert in what the car does and her as the expert in what the car could do, right? And together they should make Voltron of car engineering, right? They should become greater than the sum of its parts. But you're absolutely right. He comes in like just a little bit too expert in what he's talking about. She does the work of coming up with the floorboards and making changes to the side rails and all of that stuff. She does, but it comes at like too much prompting from Yoda to get the job done. I absolutely get that.
Yeah. So the Yoda trend. So he is racing the 1F.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I'm glad you pulled that out. I'm glad we got that recorded.
Had to throw that in there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I feel like we're close to the end of this, but wrap up with I want you to talk about your quibbles with what was going on the track, the strategy.
Right. So I want to start by saying I actually liked it. I liked what they did. I just have to say it with a little somber recognition that as a fan, I shouldn't like what they did. What they did in the form of Brad Pitt, he was an agent of chaos, and he was smarter than everyone on the team. And
the track, really.
And the track, right. Smarter than everyone on the track. Because nobody saw what he was doing as he was doing things like effectively drawing fouls, right? Like he was taking turns too tight to make other drivers run into him without just walking that line between deep steward violation and getting called out, red flagged, versus just having it be an observable accident. Like this thing happened. But the benefits of the accident to the rest of the team were Damson Idris's car could run up, could gain a few paces. It would cause some track event that caused everyone to have to go into the pit for a little while. Like everything he did was strategically counter to what his team was telling him to do and in favor of his teammate, right? Moving the game forward, moving the race forward. He destroyed a lot of cars intentionally. He made a giant mess of the track. I mean, over the course of all of those races, how much extraneous damage did the guy do? Extraordinary damage that the guy did. And yet it led them to a world championship right when it counted. And so do you have to celebrate as a fan? And this is a thing that, people are going to talk about as this movie gets more widely seen. As a fan, you have to separate what happens in the movie from the kind of violations that he caused on the track. This is cinematic. Is it legitimate? Like, can you imagine a world where a driver is so smart that he could actually engineer all of the faults in the favor of the team? Yes. Yes, you can. And that would be a hell of a season if we had a driver like Sonny Hayes. That would be a hell of a season, but it would be wildly cinematic. And I think we have to remember that this is celebrating art from the craft of racing. And let's please do that, because this was really fun to watch. And if you watch this thinking, I'm going to see this when I watch my first F1 race for real, you're not going to see this. We have no Sonny Hayes in racing.
Well, and it's funny because and they must be assuming that race fans would recognize that this is never going to never has happened, because they would even have we'd hear the announcers when he'd pull one of these things that would cause all the racers to get behind the slow car that they'd all have to kind of go behind for a lap or two.
Yeah, the emergency car.
Yeah, and then you'd have the announcers. Man, well, the only people this are really going to benefit are the Apex and Sonny and JP, as if they'd say it as if it's a surprise, it's like nobody ever caught on that there's a strategy here. And it was strange to me, like, oh man, you wonder, like they would say things like, you wonder if they planned all of this. It's just like, God, like, duh, like how obvious do they have to make it? It was kind of like shocking, at times. Cause I mean, right out of the gate, he's already doing it. The very first time he hops in the race, he fakes his ability to start the car and starts it late so that he can have hot tires before everyone and get on the track and be better. And so it's like right out of the gate, he's already doing it. So it's like by the time they're getting to that 9th race, they should have figured out that this is kind of what Sonny's up to.
Exactly. And in fact, they did. And he used that against them, right? Like he said, everybody thinks I'm chaos now, so they won't be paying attention to you, right? That was in the movie. And it's true. It's accurate. And am I clutching my seat as I'm watching these races? Absolutely. But it is a little too far afield from the norm. And so is what it is. It's a movie and I love it and it's exciting and it's great. And they use real regulation and it's essentially a thought experiment of what if a team and a driver pushed every regulation to its absolute possible limit. What would a race look like? And that's what this is.
Seems like they're patterning after modern politics in America.
Kinda, right.
It didn't say we couldn't.
Yeah, right. That is what this movie is all about. It's pushing every possible limit and just up to the steward's notice and not any further. Until they get in trouble. And so
I have one more question for you.
Sure.
That because you just said he wins the championship or whatever, but he only wins that race.
Right. Well,
right. Because I mean, they had 9 races left.
Yeah.
They've never won a race. The first 2 or 3 that they actually are in together, they never even finish. So that's like they're down to maybe 6-ish races. And they finally get to a place where they're able to place in a few, but they're only just placing. They never win. And it's just that very last race that Sonny, through convenience, is able to finish and become in first place. But as a team, and even as an individual driver, he's not winning the overall whatever it is. Because Ruben is like, you're the best in the world. I'm like, well, is he though? He's not, because he won a race of X number of races that are part of this entire.
Yeah, he won I think it was the Abu Dhabi at the end, right? The Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. And so he won that. He did not win the Drivers' Championship, right? He did not win the Constructors' Championship. We've talked about the Drivers versus
Nor did Apex win.
Right, Apex didn't. But here's the most important part. When a driver wins a Grand Prix, they get points. Points equal money. So while we can assume that Apex is not in the black yet, they are certainly moving further out of the red, and they buy themselves another 3 years to try to continue to win races. So the movie, as many of these movies are, they're not about, ultimately winning everything without cost. It's a movie about like baby steps. Like we're excited for the sort of liminal space that exists between today and an uncertain future.
Yeah, right.
But it's actually really funny. The broadcaster that I was talking about, that we see him again at the end, his name is Will Buxton. He was, at the time, the Fox voice for all coverage of F1. And last year, he moved over to NASCAR, I think. He's now a NASCAR and 2025 NASCAR guy. But what's really fun about Will Buxton, because he's a motorsports journalist, the behind-the-scenes tours of the paddock with Brad Pitt are all interviews with Will Buxton in his professional capacity as a journalist. He's also a character, Will Buxton, in this movie. I find that a delightful bit of Inception.
Interesting.
Anyway, really, really fun.
Well, I mean, it's a fun movie, and it's, making its money, so good stuff. Any last points?
Yeah, you're not enthusiastic enough. It's fine. That's my only point.
I'm sorry. All right, well, we'll be right back, but first, our credits.
The Next Reel is a production of True Story FM. Engineering by Andy Nelson. Music by Phantoms, Oriel Novella, and Eli Catlin. Andy usually finds all the stats for the awards and numbers at the-numbers.com, boxofficemojo.com, imdb.com, and wikipedia.org. Find the show at truestory.fm, and if your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, please consider doing that for our show. Sequels and remakes. Andy.
Yeah, considering it just came out, not really any updates on any of that yet. But just to be clear, the F1 25 game featured the Apex livery.
Yep, livery.
The lineup, is that their lineup?
Yep.
As it appears in the film alongside scenarios that players can undertake. So if you want to play the game, you'll get to race alongside Sonny and JP and, contribute to the wins.
Outstanding. Yeah, the livery is essentially the stable of cars and drivers, yeah.
I wasn't even thinking about that in terms of horses and stuff, but it is their stable, yeah.
It's their stable, yeah. Okay, how about an award? Do we have an award yet? Please tell me there's already an award, Andy.
Believe it or not, just like last week with Ballerina, this one already has a nomination for an award, and it is at the Golden Trailer Awards for Best Action Trailer, but as we talked about last week, it lost to Ballerina.
Here's the interesting thing about that. I feel like the Ballerina trailer was great and interesting and energetic, but this is one of those examples of where Apple put a lot of money. If you own an iPhone of I think almost any variety, and you go to the TV app and you press play on the trailer for this movie, you will get a haptic trailer. The haptic trailer on your phone is like D-Box for the movie. Your phone jiggles with the vibrations of the cars. It jiggles and shakes and moves and stuff. I find it weird, and I didn't care for it. But that is an investment that Apple continues to make in promoting this movie to absurd lengths. I find it hysterical that it did not win the Golden Trailer because they actually did something novel to move their trailer game forward.
Very true. Though, again, they're not rating trailers based on their haptic vibration ability. They're basing it on the actual content of the trailer. And eventually, who knows? We may, just like maybe one day we'll have the D-Box Awards. Which movie worked best in D-Box this year? We're not quite there yet, but doesn't mean it won't happen.
Okay. Well, here's hoping.
Yeah.
How is it doing at the box office?
Well, this has been an interesting one regarding the budget. Reports came out that it was around $300 million, making it one of the most expensive movies made. You may recall last month we discussed the latest Mission Impossible movie, which had a budget of $400 million, making it the fourth most expensive film made yet. Well, this would be in the top 20 if the budget is at that $300 million mark, though closer to spot 20, actually. After these reports came out, though, both Jerry Bruckheimer and Kosinski himself came out and said it's not accurate. Kosinski said, quote, "I've never had an experience where they were off by this much on a film. I'm not sure where that number came from," end quote. And Bruckheimer said rebates and sponsorships are going to lower the budget. All this being said, it's still high, definitely above $100 million, possibly under $300 million. Who knows? For our purposes, we're just going to say $300 million and go with that. The movie opened June 25th on IMAX screens, then the 27th in the States, opposite Lost Weekend, Megan 2.0, Hot Milk, and Pony Boy. As for how it did, well, it actually opened in the number one spot, knocking out the How to Train Your Dragon live-action remake, and beating the other new release, Megan 2.0, which opened in fourth. It looks like it's going to do well, as it's already made $55.6 million domestically and $88.4 million internationally, earning $144 million on its opening weekend. Does it mean it's going to make its money back? Well, it really kind of depends on what the actual budget is. We may never know.
I got the ComScore email this yesterday, and It was interesting to see that it opened in the number one spot. It opened in the number one spot in a lot of territories in terms of an international release, more territories than I would have expected. That bodes well. I'm also interested to see how the contribution from alternative screens shows up. I saw it in IMAX. I know you saw it in IMAX. We recommend IMAX. I'm going to see it again this week before it leaves in Screen X. This will be my first Screen X viewing. I'm very excited about that.
Explain what Screen X is so people know what that is.
I wish I knew entirely what it is. My understanding is it's Screen X is the theater that ours apparently it has the screens on sides too. I don't know. The reason in Screen X is so puzzling is that you have your main principal screen, you have screens on the sides. It's puzzling because you never quite know what they're going to put on those side screens, right? Like how are they going to fashion more, width from the movie? So I'm very excited to check that out. So alternative screens, I'm really interested. I haven't heard anybody who's seen it yet in 4DX, but my God, can you imagine them just pumping polluted air just right in your face? For realism, dirty air.
Sounds like fun.
Oh, God, I can't wait. I might actually, we don't have one here. I might drive up to Seattle to see it. That would be a commitment. That would be a hell of a commitment.
The sort of commitment that I think you would make, though.
It does feel like that's on brand for me right now.
It does. Yeah, it does.
Okay. Well, I loved it. Whatever. I did. What are you going to do?
I had a great time. It was very fun, but man, was it eye-rolling. And so it's an interesting one for me. So it'll be curious to see where we go from here.
Yeah, I guess so. Hey, before we dig in, Andy, to our next segment, which is the one where people show up to actually hear our ratings at letterboxd.com, I just wonder if there's any last reminder that we would like to give people about why they're hearing this show right now.
Yeah, that's a great point. This is one of our member bonus releases that go out to members, but every once in a while over the course of a season, we will release them out to the public as well to tune in and hear the sorts of bonus episodes that members get. This past entire season that we just are wrapping up, we were celebrating because Roger Corman had just passed away right before the season started. We decided let's do an entire season celebrating Roger Corman and all of his movies. Was that a good decision? I don't know, but we did talk about a very interesting variety of films for people to tune into those. But I mean, usually we'll tie the member bonus episodes into a particular series. Like this is a perfect example of what often our member bonus episodes will be like, where, hey, we're doing a car racing series. Let's throw in one other car racing movies. F1 happened to open, so we did that. But often we'll have members actually get to vote in our members only channels over in Discord. They can vote on the movies. And then we'll throw 5 to 10 options their way and they'll pick. And that's what we'll talk about in a particular month. And so, so we do member bonus episodes. We'll do a post-show chit chat where we have question and answer. Like as we do these live stream, questions come in from anyone listening and we'll answer questions over the course of it, points we missed, other things to potentially discuss, et cetera, et cetera. And so, membership it's just a great way to support the show. We are always grateful when people decide to become a member and to just help us out. It's $5 a month or $55 a year. Yeah, you can learn more at thenextreel.com/membership or truestory.fm/join. That's TRUSTORY/join.
Letterboxd, Andy, letterboxd.com/thenextreel. That's where you can find our HQ page if you want to follow us. And here we go. We're assigning stars and hearts. Stars and hearts. All right.
Why don't you go first? I know where you're going to go.
5 stars and a heart, Andy. 5 stars and a heart. I don't care about tropes. I don't care. I care about how I felt when I was watching this movie. And even when I was rolling my eyes, I still loved it.
And I'm torn because, the tropes were so frustrating for me. The race footage wasn't any different from the way I felt about it. I know is shot differently, but I didn't feel any different about it than I did Ford v Ferrari. It was just great race footage on the track. But this film excelled at the teamwork aspect of it and really opening the window for me to have a glimpse into how this works. So while the script is probably a 2.5. Like, it was rough for me, the script. The other elements I thought excelled. So I'm gonna land on 3.5. And I think that's probably higher than you thought based on your gasp.
Andy, that is much higher than I thought. And I think that's parade worthy. That's balloons in the outfield.
I was torn. 3.5 is kind of where I felt, but I don't know. I really enjoyed that world that they painted for me. And so 3.5 and a heart. So that will average out to 4.25 over at our account at Letterboxd at the next reel, which will round up to 4.5 and a heart. You can find me there at Soda Creek Film. You can find Pete there at Pete Wright. So what did you think about F1? We would love to hear your thoughts. Hop into the Show Talk channel over in our Discord community, where we will be talking about the movie this week.
When the movie ends,
our conversation begins. And I just want to say, like Ballerina, I'm incredibly grateful that this film is just called F1.
I know. Unfortunately, in Letterboxd, it's still F1 the movie, which I feel like needs to change.
I think Ballerina is still from the world of John Wick. Ballerina, like, they need to update these things.
Yeah. Letterboxd giveth, Andrew.
As Letterboxd always doeth.
All right, long or short?
I have a very, very long one from a film critic. I'm not going to read their entire review. You can go to their website to read it.
Go ahead. Why don't you go first? I got a short one.
I'm going to read the first 3 paragraphs of David Ehrlich's. I usually don't like celebrating the work of David at all, but I just think this is an interesting point based on our conversation. It's the first 3 paragraphs. In a clear flex of corporate synergy, Apple promoted its first summer blockbuster with the release of a haptic trailer that imitates the purr of an F1 engine in the palms of your hands. The clip delivers such well-calibrated vibrations that watching it on an iPhone makes it seem like you're microdosing 4DX right on the subway, or the toilet, or wherever it is you choose to enjoy the film industry's latest breakthrough in vertical integration. But the real potency of this ad and the real potential of the technology that it represents can only be experienced by viewing the promo on mute. The haptic feedback is so nuanced and expressive that you can literally feel the basic plot and emotions of Joseph Kosinski's F1 through your fingertips. It's the closest thing to pure cinema I've ever enjoyed on a device that I primarily use for playing Marvel Snap and Googling answers to my 5-year-old son's trivia questions. Yes, a rhino could outrun Usain Bolt. How disappointing, then, that the film itself manages to offer so little of the same thrill, despite the benefit of booming Dolby speakers, the scale of an IMAX screen, and the sleekness of a director whose aesthetic naturally cleaves toward Apple commercials. See Oblivion. That's certainly not for lack of trying. I just wanted to go with that because I find, 1, now I want to just watch the trailer on mute and see how it feels.
Yeah.
But 2, I just think it's an interesting exploration of the nature of haptic trailers and storytelling.
That David Ehrlich picked up the haptic trailer thread and ran with it for 3 straight paragraphs right after I finished ranting about it on our show.
Exactly.
I've got a 5-star and a heart. This one comes from Aiden, who says, "This is me giving 5-star rating to straight propaganda and an Apple commercial. Absolutely enjoyed it. Hashtag I love IMAX." Straight propaganda and an Apple commercial. Mwah. Brilliant. Thanks, Letterboxd. And a shout out to Paul for the Forrest Gump effect. F1 sounds like the ultimate insert of fictional characters into reality. We might want to call it Forrest Gump effect. Paul, that's going in the glossary, I think, for sure, right?
I know. This is the first external voice we've had who's getting something added to the glossary.
Special credit to Paul.
Excellent. All right. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. See you next time.